Welcome into the Sports Shuffle. January 27, 2023. I am Flying Ryan Gokers along with.
Tampa Motor Mouth Joel Verone, wondering when it's going to get a little bit warmer. Not summer, you're going to freaking melt warmer, but not so much where it's close to snow, but not snow.
Yeah, it'll happen before Brett Maher misses his next extra point for sure.
Yeah,
What
did
else?
you?
You have serious problems?
Yeah, did you see the meme? What was it? I'm going to go to Maher's house. I'm going to eat all his food because he can't kick me out.
Yeah. A lot of cowboy memes going around. Don't punch or back over your TV with your truck. It's not the
But,
TV's fault. Your team is
yeah,
trash.
there were two. We were talking about it before the magic button was pressed. There were two videos, I think, making, and I'm sure there are more because you always have such massive displays of intelligence. Of You had one who literally just punched and blew up a smart TV after the Cowboys lost, and then you had another person even more brilliantly put another TV right under their truck and back over it. Either one, not really good, recommended for TVs. I don't think if you have the protection plan, you can call them. So, what happened? It fell.
It fell under my Ford F-150, and I backed over it about 7 times because Dak's a pile of trash. Yeah, that doesn't go so well. So, yeah, we'll get to that
That's
game and the other three here in a minute.
yeah. It's not good when the very first game has been the only game where you could call it competitive. Because I know, once again, you would look at that Cowboys score with the 49ers and just glancing at the score, well, it was close. Not really.
No, the Niners, not necessarily on the scoreboard, but we're in solid control of that game throughout.
It was like
Jaguars, though, were competitive. That's a good thing.
it was like hearkening back to the Bucks and the Cowboys because you look at it as, oh, well, 31-14. Okay, Bucks. No, you watched even 5 minutes of the Bucks performance and you were just going, oh my good God. I mean, but it was the Bucks. If you watched any of them this year, it's what you would expect. And yeah, that was like the other meme. It's amazing, right? It's amazing how our lives have become. By the way, this meme, you can everything is just sort of broken down into memes. But the other meme that I saw before the game happened, which was so true, it was a picture of the Mexican guy in the big hat, and it's the last. This is the last game that the Cowboys are going to play in, and I'm like, yeah, true, because
Yeah.
the Bucks were allegedly there. They allegedly showed up. Good God, but oof. And then there was the other meme. Speaking of memes, where it was Dak and a teammate, and it says, "Dak, I'm scared. We're gonna have to play a real team now."
Yeah, yeah, there were some memes going on before. There's a lot of Cowboys memes going on after. There's some tweets that Eli Apple had some fun with of the Cincinnati Bengals that we may or may not get to here in a little bit.
There was even actual shade from the official Cowboys Twitter account, literally criticizing Dak, and uh, people were asking, they're going, "Did Stephen A. get hacked the account?" I mean, you had to believe, you had to believe after that was posted at some time there was a telephone call from Jerry Jones going, "Okay, somebody needs to be put in charge, and whoever's in charge of this needs to be given other duties, if not let go."
Anyways,
Because it's bad when the official account throws shade. That's when you know it's bad.
yeah, so we'll get to games here in a second. Not a whole lot of other news outside of Travis Kelsey questionable for Sunday's game.
You,
Um,
you, you
Popped
know,
up late on the injury
you know,
report.
Patrick
But
Mahomes is playing. I mean, I'm sorry.
Pat Mahomes with the ankle injury is going to play as well. Frank Reich hired as the Carolina Panthers head coach, so that is the first official hiring that I've seen so far. It sounds like D'Amico Ryans of the 49ers is on track to be the Houston head coach, and it sounds like Sean Payton most likely going back to TV for one more year. I think he wants that Chargers job or maybe the Dolphins job or something like that. And we're not going to go into the speculation about Tom Brady touring private schools in Miami because I don't want to speak that evil
Well,
into the world.
oh,
You stay away from Miami.
the only thing about Miami that could add some credence to possibly increasing the confidence that Brady is going there, even though he was a little bit vocal even on his Let's Go podcast when Jim Gray ended up asking him about what his thoughts on the future was. So I think he's really tired of answering that question. But there was an interesting tweet from Tua Tagovailoa that was a little bit cryptic, but if you tend to read between the lines, you tend to think, is he going to be back in Miami next year?
I didn't see the tweet. I do know he's still in concussion protocol, which is not good since it's been about a month
Well,
now.
the tweet sort of just said it was, and I'm paraphrasing here, that he was thankful for his time in Miami and he's ready for whatever's next. And paraphrasing, but that just seems to, yeah, I'm not saying that that definitely means he's 100% done, but it's just sort of one of those things that was like Tom Brady's conference afterwards, that little bit that you're watching it, you're going, this sure sounds like a goodbye speech without it being a goodbye speech. And that kind of sounds like a two maybe going on to something else. Maybe you're not sure. Maybe it was one of those emotional tweet type things, and maybe he is coming back to Miami. So who knows?
The tweet I'm looking at: when one chapter ends, another begins. Proud of this last one, excited for the next one. It almost sounds like he was kind of talking on the end of the season. Proud of how the season went. I don't know if that's a goodbye. If you look at his Twitter, he is definitely not planning on leaving Miami because it shows him in all his Dolphins gear glory. Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback, Miami Dolphins. I think you're kind of stretching to think that's
Okay,
a goodbye speech, but
maybe
stranger
it's
things have happened.
maybe it's a sort of a wrapping the year up in a bow and sort of getting ready to move on to the next year.
You also have to remember this is a man who's still dealing with concussion-like symptoms, so he might not even know what he meant by that at this time. So hopefully he recovers, and like to see him back next year, but also got to start to worry about the man's health long term. So not clearing concussion protocol in 4 weeks plus is not great. He has already been ruled out of the Pro Bowl, so he cannot play flag football with his friends because that's the thing this year apparently, and not looking forward to that, as is nobody. Nobody looks forward to the Pro Bowl. Everybody looks forward to this weekend and then a couple weekends down the road when we're at the Super Bowl.
Well, that's like remembering years past with the Pro Bowl. You're trying to pump yourself up. You turn it on, and literally in the first 2 minutes, you realize nobody's really trying to tackle anybody.
Yeah, it's a great game to watch because it's very easy to take a nap during. Anyways, I said
Sort
the
of.
same thing about the World Cup, and that was actually great nap time for me
So
too.
that would be a ASMR that you don't have to pay for. You just
Yeah,
turn.
it's free. It's on ABC or whatever channel it's going to be on, and 5 minutes in, you'll just be sitting there.
You
Pro
don't.
Bowl.
You don't need guided meditations. You don't need alpha waves. Just turn on the Pro Bowl.
Yeah. So all of that being said, there were 4 games that were technically games, I guess we would say.
Allegedly.
Joel 3-1 in the picks this week, falling 1 game short of me, who went 4-0. Finally, first time all year with a lead, 1 game up with 3 to go. I can only blow it from here, so here we go. Let's do the recaps real quick.
That,
Jaguars. Go ahead.
there's motivation quote of the week. I can only blow it from here.
Oh man, I believe that quote was part of Eli Apple's trolling of Stephon Diggs. You can only blow it from here. No, it's not. Anyways, first game, Chiefs 27-20 win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. This was actually the best game of the weekend. The Jaguars held tough throughout. Didn't quite have a shot at the end. They did get the last second field goal and have to attempt the onside kick, but the Chiefs get the win. The big story coming out of this game, though, was the high ankle sprain of Pat Mahomes. He did miss a couple of drives at the end of the first half. Chad Henne came in and led a 98-yard touchdown drive that ended up being the 7-point difference here. But Mahomes came back in the second half, very limited on the mobility, but still was able to get the job done. The Jaguars, a 9-8 season, getting to the divisional round. winning the AFC South. If you're a Jaguars fan, this is a dream season. You would have liked to have beaten the Chiefs. You would have liked to keep going, but back-to-back number one overall picks to the divisional round of the playoffs, a division title. You've got a lot of young talent. You've got Calvin Ridley coming back next year from the trade with Atlanta he made during the season while he was suspended. Trevor Lawrence looks like he's ready to take that next step. Doug Peterson looks like the right coach to take this team. Travis Etienne looks like he's about to explode. So if you're a Jaguars fan, a lot of good things coming up in the future. Of course, a first-place schedule is going to complicate things just a little bit. You're going to play your Bills. You're going to play your Bengals. You're going to play the Chiefs, which those aren't the best matchups for you, for anybody, really. But for the Jaguars, a great season. For the Chiefs, the fifth straight trip to the AFC Championship game, the 27-20 win. Pat Mahomes does not lose before the next round in the AFC Championship game of the playoffs, period.
Yeah, and if you look at this as through the eyes of a fantasy football player, Travis Kelce was still Travis Kelce, just, dollars on, absolute baller. And Chiefs surprisingly ran better than expected, with Pacheco being the main man, and McKinnon, who really maybe helped people in fantasy playoffs, was a little bit of a disappointment. Then, of course, you had top fantasy running back producer has to be Travis Etienne. It was nice to see that, even though it was a swan song for the season, as it was for the Jaguars. Was a bit of a disappointment, and that's probably why, because he had running there, but Chiefs defense, they are legit, and they're moving on. But Jaguars can definitely hold their head high. They have a bright future ahead.
Yeah. No complaints if you're a Jaguars fan. The way this season went, unfortunately, it does end a little bit short of the ultimate goal, but the Chiefs move on. And we will move on to the worst game of the weekend, worst game of the playoffs so far. It was a game that I think for me, the highlight was that the first down chain broke very early in the game. They actually had to stop the game for a few minutes to fix it with duct tape or athletic tape, whatever they fixed it with, because frankly, outside of that, there was nothing interesting in this one. Eagles 38-7 win over the New York Giants. The Giants, another team, didn't expect to be here. They do make the divisional round, so a good season for the Giants. The Eagles, though, they come in. Jalen Hurts looked like every bit of Jalen Hurts that we were expecting. Very, very good performance. They outclassed the Giants in this one. They outclassed them the first time they played this season, so not a big surprise that the Giants do not put up a good fight here. This is one that I think everybody going into this weekend had as a surefire lock that the Giants were not going to win this game. But the Eagles come out. They look like a very dangerous team. They're the number one overall seed for a reason. We'll see how they do in the NFC Championship game, but the Giants season comes to a close after a very disappointing finish to the Eagles. But for the Giants, another team, high draft pick last year, haven't been in the playoffs in a while. First playoff win since I think 2011 this year. So some good things for the Giants. They have a good head coach in Brian Daboll. Maybe Daniel Jones is going to turn the corner like Josh Allen did under Brian Daboll. Only time will tell. We'll see if they can get some wide receivers in free agency. But the Giants, another team, you're looking at the end of your season in a very positive light. The Eagles looking at the NFC Championship game as the next stepping stone to their ultimate goal of the Super Bowl title.
Yeah, just the Eagles ran all over the Giants. They were like the steamroller running over Wile E. Coyote pretty much in this game, as Sanders and Gainwell definitely outgained Saquon Barkley, who was extremely limited over. He had like one really big play, and then maybe rushed for a little bit, but absolutely squat, as Danny Dimes might be reclassified Danny Penny, as he had no chance in this game. And Jones' only a viable target was Richie James, who was definitely could be one of the heroes for the fantasy playoffs. But yeah, no other Giant logged more than 21 receiving yards. They got lambasted, they got bamboozled, and they got absolutely steamroller and stomped. This game was over at halftime.
Yeah, this game was off by halftime, and we saw some crazy comebacks the first week of the playoffs. This one,
Not
if
this
you
way.
watched it past halftime, you are a fan of either of these teams, because if you were just a casual fan, there was nothing here for you after the halftime.
Yeah, plus
It was over. It was done. Move on.
it had to be flipping cold as bleep in that stadium too. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that's
Sure was.
loyalty.
Speaking of places it was cold, Buffalo, New York, some snow on the ground for the most anticipated game of the week. Damar Hamlin in the building to watch the Bills not show the hell up. Bengals
That pretty much sums it up.
27-10 win. And the Bengals just look like they outclassed the Bills in every way, shape, and form. Damar Hamlin, when you saw him in the building, there were a lot of people I talked to saying, oh, they're going to be ramped up. They're going to want to win this game. It sounded like when he was in the building, they kind of said, oh, Damar's fine. We can take the foot off the gas. The Bengals, back-to-back AFC Championships games for the first time in franchise history. They'll face the Chiefs again. This will not be at a neutral site because the Bengals would not have been able to tie the Chiefs in any
Could
way, shape, or form with
could
the
you
result of
imagine
that
me
Bills game.
having to be the poor person who has to refund all those tickets?
I'm sure it's an automated system at least, but the Bengals will go to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. The Bengals won 3 games against the Chiefs, the last 3 all by 3 points. So the Bengals do not count this team out going into Kansas City and getting another win. They did it last year to make the Super Bowl. They did it this year in the regular season, and they're going to try and do it again in the postseason. The Bills, we talked about how the positivity of the losing teams in the games on Saturday, you could feel some pride. The Bills are going to feel a lot of disappointment. This is a team that was a perennial Super Bowl favorite to start the season, and they fell apart. They looked awful against Miami. Cincinnati looked awful against the Ravens, but they really came in this game, and the Bills just did not show up. It's going to be a long off season for Buffalo. A lot of teams, a lot of players, they got to get under contract. No Devin Singletary in that backfield is definitely a free agent, and there's going to be some defense pieces as well. But the Bills, a disappointing end to what was a promising season, but the Bengals, back-to-back AFC Championship games.
Yeah, so much for that offensive line that was injured, as they probably did one of the best performances all season, limiting the exposure of one Joe Burrow to that Bills defense. As Mixon absolutely gashed the Bills on the ground. P. Ryan was a little bit of a receiving threat on the side. And yeah, Jamar Chase was who Jamar Chase was after the injury. It was nice to see him slowly get back to his optimal level. And just for the Bills, Allen wasn't as nearly sharp as Burrow. Really, in the shootout, they seemed to lose after the second quarter. They were not only absolutely outpaced, and of course the most iconic image I think you can take away from the game is Stephon Diggs expressing his displeasure with the oblique. Here we go again. It's Groundhog Day for the Bills. As you saw, there's the picture of Stephon Diggs. I think it was 3 years ago. There's the other team out there and the celebrating. He's standing there watching it. And you just have to feel for the dude who this is his 3rd year in a row of losing. I mean, you just have to be ticked off and torqued off.
Oh, you got to get the wins. You can't get upset when you don't show up, and the Bills just did not show up in this one. Again, long off season coming for the Bills. They still have a very good team. They're still going to be very much in contention for Super Bowl next year. But the Bengals and Chiefs, to me, look like the top 2 teams in that conference until someone else can jump in, whether that's the Bills, whether that's the Jaguars, the Dolphins, who have some promising young players. Whether it's a team like Tennessee, maybe Tennessee rebounds. Until you get another team that comes up and knocks one of those 2 off, it really looks like Mahomes and Burrow are going to be this generation's Manning and Brady. We'll see who gets the win on Sunday. And then we move to the last game of the weekend. I remember saying last week, this could be a high-scoring game. This could be a low-scoring game. This could be somewhere in the middle. It was more of a low-scoring game. The Niners win 19-12, but the Cowboys just really didn't get anything going. An early touchdown, and then they just kind of stalled out. The Niners, though, defense was very good. A couple Dak Prescott interceptions helped them. Brock Purdy looks very good. He didn't have his best performance in this game, but did not disappoint. He got the job done and got the Niners to a win. The Niners will go to Philadelphia to play the Eagles. That's going to be a very interesting matchup because you have 2 offenses that can score like crazy and some defenses that are able to shut everything down. But the Eagles have a weakness against the run, and the Niners might have the best running back in football. So it's going to be one of those where everything lines up correctly for the Cowboys, not to mention all their fans who have broken their TVs because of stupidity. There's a lot of people calling for Dak to be sent away. They're saying he is the cause. He's the reason they can't get over the hump. They won't win a Super Bowl with Dak Prescott. Tony Pollard leaves this game with a fracture in his leg. I don't believe it was. I think it was the ankle, but it could have been his shin. I'm not 100% sure on that. Expected to be ready for the start of preseason next year, but he is a pending free agent. Zeke Elliott under a massive contract. Michael Gallup didn't show up in this one. So a lot of question marks, I think, on the offensive side of the ball for the Cowboys. The defense, if they can retain everybody, that's still a very good unit. They're still going to be very competitive. But the questions around Dak and some of the coaching staff going into 2023, 2024 are going to be very, very interesting. Niners, though, big win onto the NFC Championship game for the second year in a row.
Yeah, just the Cowboys all of a sudden, when you lose that ground game and become one-dimensional, like Dak Prescott ended up doing, it just ends up working against you since, Lamb definitely was contained, had a decent PPR, but kept out of the end zone. Dalton Schultz got in the end zone, but not a lot of PPR. So it was just not a real good look for the Cowboys as we have reached the choke in the playoffs point for the meme as you just have to wonder who does it matter as coach? Who does it matter as quarterback? Just Dallas seems to be one of these eternally cursed teams in recent eras.
Back-to-back 10-win seasons, though, it's not a bad team. It's a team that, a couple breaks go the right way. They could get the job done. They could. I don't know if Dak Prescott's the quarterback to do it. I think when you're running into Pat Mahomes or Joe Burrow in the Super Bowl and Jalen Hurts in your division, it's going to be tough. I don't think Dak's on that level, but I think a team like Atlanta, a team like Seattle, someone like Dak Prescott coming to town could be a massive, massive upgrade. So maybe it's time for Dallas to try and capitalize on some quarterback deficient teams, maybe Carolina, maybe, even in division to Washington, try and get some draft picks and maybe draft the next quarterback for the Cowboys and see if they can start over there. That's maybe a little bit of an extreme reaction, but that is something fans have been saying. And seeing how he played the last few weeks of the season into the playoffs, I can't really argue with that too much. Anyways, now we turn our attention to the future. Joel, you are one game back in the picks with 3 to go, so you really need to make sure you get both of these. San Francisco at Philadelphia is the 3 p.m. game. Philadelphia is the 1 seed. San Francisco is the 2 seed. San Francisco is on a double-digit winning streak. They have not lost since they got Christian McCaffrey. The Philadelphia Eagles with Jalen Hurts have only lost 1 game all year.
The Commanders.
Remember, both losses to the Commanders. Both losses at the end of the season came with Gardner Minshew at the helm. So both teams very, very dynamic offensively. Brock Purdy's been a breath of fresh air for the San Francisco 49ers, but Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, they have weapons on top of weapons on top of weapons, and the top defense in football. For the Eagles, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith have been revelations on the outside for wide receivers. Dallas Goedert has come in and been a great tight end. The running back core that's anchored by Miles Sanders, but includes Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell, have been very good as well. Both teams are very, very good. If I'm going to call out a weakness that could be explored in this game, it is the Philadelphia run defense. We have seen them get gashed by Dameon Pierce. We've seen them get gashed by multiple running backs. They have at times showed up and just shut people down. But Christian McCaffrey is an animal amongst he's in his own breed. He's in his own class. He can do things that almost nobody else can in the NFL. But you can say the same thing about Jalen Hurts for the Eagles. So this should be arguably the best game of the season. Maybe this could be, the championship weekend is typically viewed as the best weekend of football in the NFL because you have two very similar teams, very well-balanced teams at this point. Who gets the win in this one, San Francisco or Philadelphia?
Yeah, this is two of the best teams in the entire conference going at it, and it's definitely all chalk. So really didn't have any surprise upsets, I think. Maybe other than the Bills.
The Giants.
But well,
Just
yeah,
the Giants
one has to question whether or not with that performance did the Giants belong there.
Well, I'm saying over the Vikings. That was the only real upset in this this year's playoffs that I can remember.
Which is interesting because the Vikings were the other team, if you remember, because of those crazy point differentials that were not much, were the other team that everyone constantly asked, did they belong there getting beaten by another team that did they belong here, and now neither team is there anymore. But you tend to look at this game, and the one thing that you have to ask is who did the Niners beat late? I think that becomes a very important question because definitely beating the Dolphins, because at that time, I believe
Beat the
we took
Dolphins with Tua.
with Tua, so that was definitely telling, and I believe that was when Brock Purdy started to take
That was
over.
his that was the game he came in for Jimmy Garoppolo, and then the next game was his first start against Tampa Bay where they just
Uh,
stomped the Buccaneers.
that stomp was kind. They absolutely decimated and totally KO'd the Bucks. As then you had the Commanders. That thing you did.
Team that was in playoff contention.
Quality win. Raiders, I would definitely question. I think they were approaching the 1% chance for the playoffs type time that for week 17. Cardinals, I definitely can't qualify that as a quality win because the Bucks ended up having to do a miracle comeback to beat the Cardinals. Also, late in the season. Seahawks, I might qualify as a quality win. Dallas Cowboys, definitely. So you definitely had some good wins, but you also had some teams that you're kind of like, okay, were they paid actors? Almost quality. But all that being said, I tend to think the main question that I'm hearing out there is that nobody has gotten to the point where they can get inside Brock Purdy's head yet. And if you can shake his confidence, that's when you can get to him. He really, I don't think, has been tried by a team who has the same amount of offensive firepower that he does. The Eagles represent that threat when we're talking Miles Sanders, when we're talking a fresh off the IR, Dallas Goddard, who is definitely can be a lethal weapon when you're looking on the one side. You're talking Devonta Smith, who's a pretty darn good wide receiver. Ditto A.J. Brown on the other side. The Eagles and Jalen Hurts is a weapon of mass destruction all on his own. We've seen it even with the shoulder that he's had a couple of weeks off to rest. That's ready for the final run to the Super Bowl and then to the Lombardi Trophy. I don't want to take anything away from the 49ers. They've had a hell of a good run. It's been a good season. Brock Purdy has so far exceeded, I think, anybody's expectations of the young man. He has been amazing, but I just think you have the immovable force, unstoppable object thing happening. And I've got to pick the Eagles. They just have on both sides of the ball. And I know you can make the same exact argument for the 49ers. I just feel the Eagles are the more well rounded team. And that offense, just because you have a more mobile quarterback who is all a running threat on himself. Granted, that's a double edged sword because that means he's more susceptible to injuries and getting injured, as we have definitely seen this year already. But I think he is the more altogether well rounded package with his team. And the Eagles are a more lethal weapon than the 49ers. I think it's going to be a high scoring game, but I think the Eagles are going to have just a little bit more edge than the 49ers.
Well, I'm going to take San Francisco here. I believe with Christian McCaffrey, this offense is more dynamic than most in the NFL. I think a player like Jalen Hurts, they can put a spy. San Francisco is good enough defensively in the secondary and with the offensive line to put a spy on Jalen Hurts and not let him hurt the team running all over the place like he could be doing. I think the weaponry, I think I take Kittle over Goddard. I know I take Christian McCaffrey over Miles Sanders. It's definitely a little bit of a favor for the Eagles with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, but not a huge one over Debo and Ayuk. And frankly, I trust the head coach of the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan a lot more than Nick Sirianni for the Eagles. So I'm going to take the Niners in this one. I think the defense is going to have to step up. They're going to take Miles Sanders away. The running game is going to have to go through Jalen Hurts, and I think they're going to be smart enough to find a way to contain him as well. And with that being said, I think San Francisco is going to get the job done. I think they're probably the most dangerous team left in the Final Four of the NFL, and I think they get the job done, get to the Super Bowl this year, and Brock Purdy, rookie in the Super Bowl, we'll see how he fares. Moving on Cincinnati, Kansas City. This is a rematch of last year's.
Shocking that Ryan went contrarian there.
I have all the incentive to just go what you've picked and say I'm going to hold this lead,
Well,
but I honestly just don't. I don't see the Eagles winning.
well, to be fair, you can see honestly either outcome with these games
Yeah,
because
and
these
that's the
teams are
thing.
so good.
These are very evenly matched teams. You can make the argument almost identical for one
You've
side than the
seen
other.
how ridiculously close that spread is.
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. I just for some reason feel like the Niners have something special going. That being said, we're moving on. Cincinnati, Kansas City, a rematch of last year's AFC Championship game. Already you've mentioned the Bengals have won 3 in a row by 3 points over the Kansas City Chiefs. So the history favors the Bengals. However, home field is something in the playoffs. Kansas City will be rocking for the AFC Championship game. It's the 5th in a row for the Chiefs. And you got to think revenge is going to be on the mind of Kansas City. Pat Mahomes, a little bit gimpy, but should be good to go if Travis Kelce can go and is healthy enough to play at his level. That is a big, big weapon. When you look at these two defenses, neither one of them strikes fear into the heart of the offense, but both can come up with timely, big time plays. We saw it with Kansas City last week against Jacksonville, making some big stops and some key plays. And Cincinnati, of course, shutting down Buffalo pretty heartily in the snow up in Buffalo last weekend. Cincinnati, the reigning AFC champion, looking to go back to the Super Bowl for the second year in a row. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're the perennial team. They're the alpha and the omega, the beginning and the end of the AFC contenders conversation is typically the Kansas City Chiefs. But Cincinnati's got their number. So does Joe Burrow have what it takes to beat Pat Mahomes once again? Or does Pat Mahomes, even on his bum ankle, get the job done?
When you look at this game, I think there are two things that immediately strike out at you as to why I'm picking the Bengals. Point number one, Patrick Mahomes is an amazing phenom in of himself. You can never deny that. I think anybody, but he is not at 100%. If you have that ankle sprain that makes him not as normally mobile as he usually is, that might cut into some of his choices of plays. And I think the Bengals are a good enough team with a good enough defense. We saw that Sam Hubbard run back that absolutely changed the entire flow of that game. And you also have on the other thing that I think the Bengals are playing with a little bit of chip on their shoulders. They feel like they've been slighted with the whole neutral site game, just with how they've been treated. Granted, it was the right thing to do, especially with what happened to Damar Hamlin. No denying that, but you have to take a look at things from the Bengals' point of view, and they just not sort of, they feel definitely disrespected, and they're playing with a little bit or a lot of a chip on their shoulder. And if you use that anger productively, you can channel it, and it can actually help your team when you also look. And I know the Chiefs are that kind of, they're like, I call them, they're like the more collective, they're like the San Francisco 49ers. One player is hurt, boom, put in somebody else, exactly the same level of excellence that the previous player had. Amazing. You can look at the Jared McKinnon as a perfect example. When you had a Hilaire all of a sudden just sort of vanish from the face of fantasy football as we know it. But you're looking at the Bengals. It's a very impressive offense. Both offenses are impressive, but I also think that you have that little bit. The Chiefs already have a Lombardi trophy. The Bengals want to complete their quest that they weren't able to complete last year. When you have something that's like that, that's in your brain, that you have desire, that you want it at whatever the cost, it doesn't matter. We're going forward. And that's the mentality that Joe Burrow is entering into this year, this season, and now this postseason. And he has the weapons to back him up. I'm not taking anything away from the Chiefs. They definitely have the plethora of weapons. Anytime you've had to go up against Kelsey in fantasy football, and it would be the Monday night miracle. Oh, well, who does my opponent have? Travis Kelsey. Just sort of throw up your spreadsheets, and you're like, okay, well, this week's an L, so we'll move on to the next week. So no denying any of the offensive weaponry that the Chiefs have, but you're looking at the twin-headed snake of running. Joe Mixon, Samaje Perine, definitely devastating to a hilt. You're looking at that wide receiver core, of course, led by Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, who probably has a little bit of a personal redemption arc of his own that he wants to get to the Lombardi Trophy this year with what happened. Definitely getting criticized, I think, unjustly. I don't think he did anything on purpose. As you said, it was an absolutely fluke injury, fluke incident, but for some reason, because he was at the point of contact, he was the primary person, he has been vilified. I really tend to think that the Bengals, they're on a mission. They have a chip on their shoulder, and they have the healthier quarterback. As the big number one question is, will a potentially partially injured Pat Mahomes still be enough to carry the Chiefs into the Super Bowl? I think it's going to give the Bengals just a little bit of an edge. Both of these games are going to be close. I think both of these games are going to be good, but the Bengals will edge out the Chiefs just a little bit to get to the Super Bowl to earn one more shot.
I'm taking the Bengals as well. I think the weaponry is just that much better for the Bengals. I think Travis Kelsey being slightly banged up is going to diminish him. The Bengals have had decent enough success shutting him down, anyways. Remember last year, Pat Mahomes was fully healthy. Travis Kelsey was fully healthy. They had Tyreek Hill. They had Mecole Hardman, who's not guaranteed to play. They had some weapons that are just not fully healthy or not there at all anymore for the Chiefs, and they couldn't get the job done under the Bengals. The Bengals are pretty much as healthy as you could hope for this time of the season. And I just think they're the better team at this point. I think I trust Joe Burrow a little bit more than Pat Mahomes, which is weird to say, but I'm going to take Cincinnati for all those reasons Joel laid out. I think the weaponry of Mixon, Chase, Higgins, Boyd, and everybody else on that team is just Hayden Hurst. It's going to be tough for the Chiefs to stop. And I don't think the Juju, MVS, Mecole Hardman play at wide receiver is quite going to get the same fear out of the Bengals. They're going to be able to shut down the passing game there. And you've seen in these playoff games where the Chiefs have come out and won games where Pat Mahomes' legs are a big,
And,
big part of it. And he's
and
not
it,
going to have that ability with bad ankle.
even when the Chiefs were at 100%, Houston almost beat them.
Yeah, Houston almost beat him. The Jags almost beat him last week. I mean, this is not a team that's coming in red hot, blowing teams out. Cincinnati was on a pretty good run going into the playoffs. Didn't look great the first week against Baltimore, but they blew the doors off of Buffalo. They were on track. They were up when that game got suspended. I know it was only 9 minutes in against Buffalo the first time. And everybody's talking Buffalo's a team of destiny because they went through everything. Cincinnati was on the other end of that. There's a lot of emotional and mental scarring from that game on both sides. I'm not saying it's the same as what Buffalo went through, but there is the emotional, hey, we had to deal through all this crap too. We had to go and witness a person almost die on the field. We had to go and live in the city where he was being rehabbed and healed for a week to 10 days before he was able to leave the hospital. They were part of the candlelight vigils and all of that stuff. So there is that emotional aspect to it as well. But I think Cincinnati just is the better team at this point, and they're going to get the job done. So both of us have Cincinnati. Joel's got Philadelphia. I've got San Francisco. And we'll see. It's going to be a good weekend of football. Two very good games starting
Has
3
to be
o'clock.
has to be better than the previous weekend.
Yeah.
Please
Starting
be
at
better.
3 o'clock on Sunday, and then 6:30 for the AFC Championship game later that night. Anywho, let's go to final thoughts, Joel.
Final thoughts. Just I ended up stumbling across this rather interesting thing that happened for a college basketball game that actually had to be stopped just for a little bit. Man, this was stop the Loyola Chicago Duquesne. Hopefully, I said that right. Duquesne game just because their a Uber Eats driver walked on to the court as what happened, and you're trying to figure out it was not quite as iconic as the Kevin Harlan call for the cat. I mean, that still I think is up there as one of the best interruptions of a game ever. But this one was definitely has to be in the top 20. As all of a sudden the announcers are trying to decide, well, who is he there for? Is he looking for a player? No, apparently he was trying to deliver to a ref, and the ref told him, I think, later. So just another rather interesting reason to stop a college basketball game that might have some effect on the standings because somebody's trying to deliver somebody's dinner.
Yeah. There's been a lot of speculation about Aaron Rodgers' future with the Green Bay Packers. A lot of links to
You
him
mean
going to
you
the
mean somebody
Jets.
somebody else exists at the quarterback position considering the future other than Tom Brady?
Yes, apparently there is. Um, Nathaniel Hackett's been hired as the offensive coordinator of the Jets to try and lure Aaron Rodgers to be more likely to go to the New York Jets. He's another one who hasn't decided what his future holds. The Packers said they're not going to trade him to the NFC, which means no Panthers or anything like that. We'll see about the Colts. We'll see about we'll see about the Jets because Zach Wilson's clearly not the answer.
Nope.
I personally don't think that they're going to trade Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers wants to finish his career in Green Bay. I don't think he's got more than 1 or 2 more years left, anyways. And they've got a young enough team where they could be competitive next year. They were already a step away from the playoffs. They played atrocious football for the first half of the season. They can get the job done and get the ball rolling correctly next season.
Christian
This could be a 12-win
Watson
team.
was their savior.
Yeah, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Alan Lazard's a free agent. Doesn't look like he's coming back, but Randall Cobb's still around. They can go get another piece in free agency, get another good wide receiver. You've got 2 great running backs, a pretty solid offensive line, a great defense. Green Bay, the biggest benefit to trade him is the cap reduction, the big hit on the cap number. But I think if you have Aaron Rodgers at this point, keep him on your roster at least for the next year. He probably isn't going to play more than 2 anyways. So I think that's the best bet for everybody. But if he goes to the Jets, I sincerely hope he fails miserably because I'm a Dolphins fan and I don't want to see the Jets do well.
Well, that's crazy enough that you see the rumors of what about Tom Brady to the Jets? Can you imagine that? Because when Tom Brady came down to Tampa, since you tend to have a lot of Northeasterners down here already, so it was real easy for them to switch their quarterback loyalties from Brady in New England to Brady in Tampa. But if he goes to the Jets, he would become an instant pariah to the entire New England fan base.
Yeah, and we saw Brett Favre go to the Jets as well. That didn't go well for the
Favre.
Jets. Yeah, so hopefully for Aaron Rodgers, he stays in Green Bay. I don't think he wants to go into a division with the Buffalo Bills, who are a team that's just going to be dominant for the next few years, and a Dolphins team that, if Tua is healthy and able to play, is as good as any in the AFC. I don't think he wants to go to that division. Not to mention Bill Belichick and the Patriots are not a slouch as well. So we'll see. I don't think he's going anywhere, but there's a lot of speculation. It's a lot of speculation with the Jets. If he goes anywhere, I would say the quarterback carousel in Indianapolis keeps going, and that's where he ends up because Matt Ryan sure is not going to be back. But I think ideally for him, he stays in Green Bay. They've got a good thing going. Down year this year, but Minnesota's going to fall back. Detroit's going to be tough. Chicago's still got a couple years before he gets good. I think they can get a couple pieces and be right back in that NFC championship game contention pretty quickly. So I don't think he goes anywhere. Anyway, that's our time. So next week going to be a quick one, recaps only. We're not going to go into too much detail with the Super Bowl or the Pro Bowl. Might do a few little award type of deals for fantasy stuff on the rest of the regular season.
We won't be breaking down the individual snaps of every single offensive lineman in the NFL. Yeah, we won't be doing that.
Yeah, we're not talking the flag football game or any of the other crap they're doing for the Pro Bowl. So enjoy your nap on that game, but enjoy the good football this week. I am Flying Ryan Gokers along with
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verl.
And again, back for recaps and then getting ready for the last meaningful football game for the next 6 months. And